wanted to Digital Friday. Hard Talk starts now, and it's all about domestic violence and its impact on men. Hosted by the Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. On the system and on the set with me is Shervon Lewis. And I know Shervon will be joined by Rondell and Marlon in a short. Good afternoon, Shervon. How are you?
Hey David, I'm fine, brother. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm okay. Quite busy, but I'm okay.
All right. So we want to say welcome to all the listeners of Power 102, those at home and abroad. We would like to thank you all for taking the time out to join this very important conversation today. And as always, we say special thanks to the executives of Power 102 who had the vision, foresight to allow men this space. And we always say to men, make sure and use it, right? Radio time, airtime is expensive time. And so the Power 102 heads have invested or are invested, not had, are investing in the men of Trinidad and Tobago by giving this space to us. And always thanks you, David, for being that gracious host. I just saw Rondell pop in there, but apparently he may have been bumped off. So I'm sure he'll be back in a second. But folks, last week we started the discussion around domestic violence, and we definitely want to continue that conversation this evening. We had a very good conversation last week. We had some callers who engaged with the program, those who messaged, and to me it was a very productive conversation. So we want to continue in that vein today because we didn't get to touch on everything. There's some time ran out on us and some very important points we still needed to capture. But just before we do so, though, I want to uh, make a few announcements that impact men. Let me pull it up here. Give me 1 second. All right, so Ministry of Health, hey, Rondell, I see you back on. Afternoon, Rondell. You hearing us? Oh, David, he's saying he just messaged me. He said he's backstage. Can you add him to the program there, David?
Well, I've added him. I'm not seeing him coming on. Probably he needs to turn on his systems, his microphone, and well, I'm seeing his microphone is okay.
Yeah, I'm on now.
Okay,
Right.
nice.
Good. All right. Afternoon, Rondell. We know you're fighting it with our brother, and we pray for your speedy recovery.
I appreciate that, bro. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I was just about to announce, Rondell, before we get into the conversation, the Ministry of Health is having a health initiative for men. It's all about him. Free prostate screenings for men, which is tomorrow, God's willing, the 20th of July from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And also other services. The flyer says it includes basic health screening, mental health services, vaccinations, HIV testing, counseling services, and much more. The locations: Sangre Grande Enhanced Health Center, Queen's Park, Savannah, Paddock West, the Colonoscopy Center, Mount Hope Women's Hospital, San Fernando Teaching Hospital, and Point Fortin Hospital South. Not seeing Tobago on this list, Ministry of Health. Please don't leave out Tobago. All right? Men across the board are very, very important. And I see North Central is taking it to another level. So we congratulate North Central. They're making it, they call it men's annual checkup and big line. So they have games, they have massages, they're going to have entertainment, barbers, and a whole set of other things happening there at North Central Regional Health Authority. So we want to thank the Ministry of Health and all the regional health authorities for putting on this initiative. Men, we just come here and make noise over these things. Just saying that we're not getting these things. Nobody's paying us any attention, paying us any mind. So when they do listen and they put on these initiatives, we expect that we will show up in our numbers, right? So that is announcement number one. Yeah, that is the announcement I have to make before we get into today's conversation. You know, in the last couple weeks, we have seen. Rondell, are you back on?
Keep losing the audio.
We hearing it? Oh gosh. In the last couple, Rondell seems to be having some technical issues. I hope that is resolved quickly so he could be on in the conversation. In the last couple weeks, we have seen murders across this country skyrocket, right? Especially in the last weekend, unprecedented rate of murders in the last weekend. And one of the things I noticed, right? There's this young man who is a rideshare driver who had gone missing for a few days, and unfortunately, he was found deceased, murdered. Shaquem Charles, right? And one of the things I noticed, Rondell, if you're hearing us, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
But one of the things I noticed when Shaquem went missing for those days, women, we don't get candlelight vigils. We don't get night marches and all the things that happen, and rightfully so, when it should happen when women go missing, but also when men go missing as well. We don't see ministers of government like you see when women go missing on TV pleading and praying for the safe release and all of the things that they do. And so is it that what our life is dispensable?
Well,
Is that
I think
the message?
I wasn't in the country, but I was following, and I did notice. I think for him, it may not have been with all the grandeur as with others, but I think the family did have I could be wrong, but I think I did notice mention of a little vigil for him. But you're very right.
His family, yes, sir. And I was saying that with the exclusion of the family. I'm
Okay.
All civil society and churches and religious organization, everyone will come out and have one grand.
Correct. But to add to the point is that he is just one of a few men in very recent times, and even before that have gone missing. You understand? He is just one in a few, and his family, even his family, if the family is a rare thing for the family to put on a vigil for the young sons, or the family to initiate such a move. And this young boy's family in particular, I found, tried to keep it alive in this singular case. But just in the same week that he disappeared, I saw so many other missing men. And what came to my mind too, Shervon, is that for years we would have seen missing women, and in a percentage of them, it ends with the woman really being fatally harmed. But many a times the woman is found, or many a times it was particularly if it's a younger woman, you would see, well, it was a younger girl that was missing. We saw that for years. 16-year-old, 15-year-old, and then you see the police find them, they were somewhere. Most times when you see that come up, hunters and the hunting and searchers thing come up, and it is a man, I think you're at least 70% more likely to not see that person come back alive.
Yeah.
And the fact, and I plan to reach out to them and have them give us some kind of statistic on that. What is the probability of when a man versus a woman goes missing and finding them recovered?
Yes.
And I think even that will reveal another area where we are not noticing the vulnerability of men. And we're not saying, some people will jump on the next side of it. We're not saying that a missing woman is not important. Any missing person is important until they're found. What we are saying is that two things. the point Shervon alluded to, when a man goes missing, there's no real social outcry or concern. And two, he's most probably never going to be found living again.
And Rondell, that brings some reminder when I was reading on Shakim, the young man who went missing last year. He was only, I think, 20 or 21 years old, Orion Gomez, who went out on a date. I don't know if you remember that case. It
Right.
was around September last year. And he has gone missing and never to be
I remember that.
found since.
Correct.
21 years old. Told his family they meet this girl and he going on a date with her. And he went out, Rondell, and that is the last they heard of him.
Really, really sad, boy. And Shervon, I'm not straying off topic here, but you know, I really this week contemplated on that. I know the public may not know, but I'm battling the dengue right now. So I had a lot of time to lie down and think. So and it really break my heart, boy, to consider young males and young boys. And I asking myself, what has a young boy done in this society to experience this level of abandonment? They just like any other child, just like a girl was just born into this world as well, you know. Regardless of what we want to say that happened or took place, that I still have contentious points about in the past. You are bringing an entirely new child into an entirely new environment, an entirely more modernized and new society. And having that child, that boy or male child, suffer consequences for actions they never committed. And when I say suffer consequences, you may say, all right, we're not personally picking up a stick and beating them, but you're leaving them out of programs of leadership. Two, you have no social concern for them, as you are pointing out. Three, when it comes to the healthcare system, we don't see that they're valuable enough to put the relevant stop checks. You know, we had a conversation about that since last year, where there are so many times and opportunities a young girl growing into womanhood. There are certain stop checks in the healthcare system that demands or prompts her to come to get checkups on her health when they are lacking on the male side. So I say again, I sat and thought about it. What have these young boys done other than being born into society that for some reason hates their maleness? And I think as a society, boy, we honestly must be, I don't know if to say ashamed and at the manner in which we've conducted ourselves. And I don't even think the way we've conducted ourselves is due to the way of how we have been originally indoctrinated. It is an indoctrination that we have now seemed to crave to inherit from another place. And I think it is causing a social destruction in our country, Trinidad and Tobago. I know I was talking a little riddle there, but those who have ears to hear, I'm certain they understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I just to go back on the healthy series, when you got cut off there, I was reading the announcements about the Ministry of Health initiative this Saturday for men, right? And I applauded them for that initiative. But we want to say as well that it doesn't stop there with these one-off, once in a while initiatives, because the issues being faced by men are not once in a while. And I said on this program before that within the structure of the Ministry of Health, there's a position, Rondell, called the Director of Women's Health. Right?
Yeah.
And we are saying that an equivalent position needs to be created for men. And that's no rocket science, as my youngest son will say. Right? There are issues unique to women's health, and we acknowledge that, and we want our daughters, nieces, mothers, grandparents, wives, we want them to get the specialist attention they need. There are things that will impact them unique to them. And so yes, they need that. But then simultaneously, there are things that are unique to men where health is concerned, right? Where
Agreed.
mental health is concerned.
Agreed.
Where
And
physical health
I
is
want to cut
concerned.
you, but you know, I'm going to just jump in when you make some points. I ain't wanted to lose it at all. And we had to look at the financial contribution as well in every way. You know, we looked at it when it comes to paternity leave. But men does pay the health surcharge. Men does pay the taxes the same way. So the things that we asking for is not things that you should be begging for.
Correct.
It must be equitable. Not because, and it shouldn't even have nothing to state about gender. But just because of the fact that the same demands, even from state, on the average person, male or female, men also are subject to it.
And from an economical perspective, as you're saying there is, Rondell, a benefit to doing it. An economic benefit too, because there are studies that have shown preventative care, right, is less costly and leads to a more productive society. Correct. So if we just leave men to break down and mash up by the side of the road like an old car, there's a greater cost on the state. So no matter which angle we look at this at, what we are doing right now makes no common sense, no economic sense, no legal sense, no sense at all.
Correct.
Right? But I want to use that to segue into what we want to continue to discuss today, Rondell, because we discussing neglect. And one of the things Marlon and I and David touched on last week was the neglect of men when it comes to the topic of domestic violence.
Right.
And we said that there are some in fact, let me just highlight what I shared last week. Those who are coming in for the first time this week, about what is domestic violence, right? According to the Domestic Violence Act. Because many times, as Marlon pointed out last week, when you hear about domestic violence, you only think about the physical violence that it involves. But according to the Domestic Violence Act, domestic violence also includes emotional or psychological abuse, right? And the act goes into to list what are some of the categories that will fall under emotional and psychological abuse. It also speaks to financial abuse as well, right? And so we will post again the Domestic Violence Act on our page. We encourage you to go and read. We can't read the whole, it's about 50 pages, right? We can't read through all of it for you, right? But we'll put it on our page so you can have access to it. So it's not just physical abuse. It is emotional, psychological, financial abuse as well. And in there, go ahead, you're going to say something, Rondell?
Yeah, it's inclusive of verbal abuse, and it also extends to every person within the current domestic setting. So
right.
So with domestic violence, we always try to use it interchangeably with intimate partner violence. But domestic violence extends to anybody. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Right, it extends to anybody that is in the family home. So the person could not even be of your own blood and your own relation, but lives in the space, lives in the home. Any violence from any party to the other person, once they're in that same domestic residence, then that domestic compound, it have some families live together in an extended family capacity. Yeah. Violence of any of the forms you just made mention of, though that is considered domestic violence as well.
Yes, yeah. And so if I'm telling you, I'll read it, just read the definitions at least, and you will be surprised of the behaviors that are captured under the Domestic Violence Act. And I think because we don't know, right, is a reason why men face these types of behavior and you don't even address it, right? interfering with or damaging the property of the person is listed under the Domestic Violence Act. We said last week, Rondell, how many times you see videos on Facebook with a woman mashing up the man car and scratching up the man car and breaking up his glass because of whatever fallout they had.
Correct.
Right? That falls under the category of domestic violence. We also highlighted that preventing you from having contact with your relatives is also domestic violence.
Of course,
And
it's emotional abuse.
yes, so all the men who are being prevented from, your child is your relative, in case you didn't know. Your child is your relative. And so if you are being prevented from having a relationship with your child, in addition, when you go to court to apply for access, apply for a protection order, because that falls under the definition of emotional abuse. All right? So we spoke about those things. In addition to which, Rondell, we gave some very surprising statistics. And as Marlon and I pointed out, this is not Fathers Association who come up with this so people could say, oh, well, they're just swinging numbers to say so. Because normally when we look at statistics, we see that all you hear is men just going around beating up women. That's the way we treat it in Trinidad and Tobago, right? And even across the world, they just talk to it like if it's that is all to it, right? Men just, because that is what makes the news. But again, we made an important point. What about all the other things underneath it, right? What about all the things that lead to domestic violence? And there was this research we cited from which is published in the, where is it, Cambridge University Press, right? So this is not us making up things, and it pointed it. Some of the stuff says in a study of 14,000 young couples in the US, age 18 to 28, found that 24% of relationship had some violence. And half of those were reciprocally violent, which means both people hitting each other or abusing each other in one form or the other. Reciprocally violent. But it said, Rondell, this is the surprising part. In 70% of the cases where only one person was committing a violent act, the violent person was a woman.
Yeah, but
70% of the cases.
Shervon, I am not surprised by that, and I'm pretty sure you honestly are not surprised by it also. But I mean, we have to say we're surprised because we must make it sound surprising because it is not what is spoken of. But there is no man on this planet, and I often say it, and the places get quiet. There is no man on this planet that will never say that he hasn't been struck by a woman and has not reacted. Men have been cultured so to do. You have been told never put a hand on a woman, and I agree with that. But we as young boys growing up who have become into men have not been told, do not allow a woman to put her hands on you. Women have not been taught or told not to strike men. They have been taught that a man should not strike you. So that many a times a woman will quicker hit a man than hit another woman. Because if she hits another woman, her perception is that other woman will hit her back. That is the reality of it. So I am not surprised at all. The 30% may actually be the women who getting really abused by the men who just beat them for no reason. But the mass majority, you see it with women, even in things on social media. They slap up the man and say, hit man, I'm going to call the police. Hit man, challenging the man to hit them, knowing that if he hits them back, he will injure them severely. So anybody who is genuine or honest, or any man in any relationship, can say he has been either hit by a woman, he's either been, they either stone him with a pelter plate, pelter bag, pelter stone, do some kind of thing that could have injured him or have injured him. And after it happened to him, he didn't feel in any way as a victim or as if he was abused or if he was attacked. And the reasoning for that is that culturally and socially, we never taught young men to feel that way when they were hit by a woman. Let a man had hit him now, you would have seen a different story from him.
Mm-hmm.
But that's exactly why. So I'm not surprised by that at all.
I wanted to say good afternoon to Roberto, who is engaging us in the comments, and Biznat, right? Thank you all for engaging us in the comment. Roberto, he says domestic violence here is passing by with no reason. Look carefully at this situation. Roberto, I don't know if you're referring to a situation you are facing, right? If you are, or anybody listening, right, please make a report to the police station. There's a gender-based violence unit. But any police station you get into, make a report and also make an application before the court for a protection order. Because oftentimes the reason why, and I'll touch on it, we touched on it last week and I'll go into it again later on. The reason why, Rondell, the statistics are so skewed, and we shared research on that last week as well, it's because of the underreporting as well. Right?
Correct.
And Marlon and I have said both our experiences, and I'm sure you can attest to this in large volume, that many times men come to us who are victims of domestic violence, and when we do connect them with the police, we connect them with the gender-based violence unit and so on, halfway through or quarter way through the process, they pull back and say, "No bother." That has been my experience most of the time, and Marlon was saying the same thing. In very few cases, we have seen men pursue this to the end. Has that been your experience as well, Rondell? You're muted, if you're talking.
Oh, sorry about that. I say, of course. I mean, and some of them just send me the videos of them being abused. And sometimes, even though they don't want to do nothing, I still forward it. Because if you make it known to me and I see physical abuse, I have to make a report or I have to at least send something. But sometimes I see it, I've seen men, sometimes the person ain't lashing them, but I saw a particular man, the woman, stabbing the knife all over the couch, all around him, stabbing up the sofa, and he's sitting on the sofa. You understand? And his sister is who sent that one to me because he refused to go to make a report because he don't want the wife to get in trouble. I hope now it's alleviated in some way. You understand? And then when I send that to the police still saying we need him to come and give a statement. You understand?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we need, and as I was saying before, the reason why there's this level of hesitancy to go through and follow through with these things is because of the way we've been cultured. And if we realize as a society that there is a lack and proper culture in a particular topic or issue, it is the duty of the state, just like how they make it their duty in instances to raise awareness and sensitize issues that they believe women, when they are at risk, should be sensitized on. It is then the duty of the state to sensitize that person or that group of persons that are now deemed vulnerable. It is their duty. It means their ads must now come out reflected in a particular way so that those persons could see themselves as the victims that they are, so that they understand that they should take action. But when a state doesn't do that, and the pervasive culture continues to perpetuate throughout generation to generation, it will only continue.
Yeah. There's an experience that I found online. Somebody wrote a little journal of an experience that they went through. And he said, the doctor dismissed my bruises and welts on my arm as no cause for concern. It instilled in me the sense that as a man, recognition of my position as a victim of domestic abuse would not be forthcoming. After thoughts of self-harm, I called a helpline, and the helpline indicated that they could not offer me any help because I was a man and this was a female helpline. They don't have funding to support male victims, they said to me. I continued to live in fear of my wife's aggression and of her impact on the children who were also experiencing abuse. during a particularly terrible act of extreme violence, my wife was driving a knife to my throat and threatening to blame me for hurting her while calling the police and hanging up. My 7-year-old daughter ran to tell the neighbors what was happening, and eventually the police arrived, intervened, and arrested her. And we see these things and we make joke of them sometimes. You know?
Correct.
Again, on social media, we see woman beating up man in the road. And what do we get for it? But when you read the comments, what you see right here in Trinidad, me talking about nowhere else in the world.
You look
You
for
see
that.
people harassing the man, laughing at him.
Yeah. You
Right?
look for that. Look at
in
him.
some of these videos, Rondell,
Yeah.
when the man get had enough and he start to fight back, you know they're ready to hang him now. Now the comments switch immediately.
Correct.
Right?
That is a woman.
Yeah, right.
That guy said, this is a woman, how you could do a woman that, and these kind of things. And it brings to my memory the case, I think it was the end of last year, and we highlighted it. When the gentleman went to the station, and in the police station, there was an altercation between the sergeant and the junior officer. And the man was there bleeding based on the record of what the female officer was saying, waiting for the police to assist him to go to the home. And they knew this was a man that possibly was being abused. And while he was there, a police officer telling him that, he said, you like a woman do that? All the time this woman beating you up so. Well, he use the expression of the woman private part. Is that you like so? Is that why you're so stupid? Could you imagine? And that surface throughout Trinidad and Tobago, we possibly were the only persons that said anything about that. I am telling you, if a police officer had said that to a woman who came into the station and said, we tell you to leave this man, is the man private party like so much you can't leave him? And that had gone viral anyway. I am telling you, not only local organizations would have that policeman truth, it would have had international organizations like United Nations would have had that man's truth. And to me, the United Nations has been a failure when it comes to the true advocacy, when it comes to the representation of human rights. Because men are humans too. And I will say it anywhere. Anywhere they call me to approach them, and I think very recently we're going to have the opportunity to, and I will tell them to their face that they are not a humanitarian group. Because men are members of this human society as well. And regardless of what has happened in the past, if you are a current and modern organization treating with current and modern issues, you are entitled to, based on what you attribute, you are entitled to seek the needs of the humanitarian rights of every living human being. And that is my position on them for now.
And I will add to that in my position that by their very approach to handling domestic violence and all forms of abuse in the past decade or more has created the opportunity for men to be exploited, for men to be ignored, and I'm saying men, but I mean men and boys here, right?
Yeah.
For men to be abused, right? And also for women and for this to impact women in a great way as well.
Agreed.
Because go back to these very same stats that we read just now. And then Marlon pointed it out succinctly last week. He said, when in that 70% of the cases, eventually when you can't get no help, it's one out of two things, Rondell.
Very well. That was going to be my next point.
Yeah, it's one out of two things going to happen. And there we will see the suicide impact, right? Some men, they just can't take it no more and they break and they kill themselves. And in some cases, they kill you with them too.
Correct.
Right? So then what? By ignoring the data that has been there, and my surprise, not to what it, because we know we living out here. My surprise is that this documented and published somewhere in a big university. And when you're hearing all the educated people talking, Rondell, you don't hear it. It's like the thing go the night before Christmas, not a stir in the house, not a peep. That is what is silence. You don't hear this information. Why? Because they are driving this topic based on agendas.
Correct. Not to correct what's taking place in society.
Not to correct what is really taking place. Yeah.
Correct. And you're right. And that would have been my point. You are actually opening women up to more danger. Because as anything, any living thing that has had too much, it would retaliate. All may not, but there's going to be a percentage that will. And even if we want to go back to the days of slavery, you would see there were some very rebellious slaves who had too much too.
Mm-hmm.
So long and short of the story, any living being that has had too much, and maybe some women advocates may say there was a point we had too much as well, and we had to stand up. But they got the support to stand. If you are not given the opportunity, or you're not letting justice prevail in instances where it's justifiable for it to do so, people find a way to take justice into their very own hands.
Mm-hmm.
And that could never end for the sex that is predominantly the weaker sex physically. That is biological. Who want to dispute it could try to dispute it. There's a reason why the fastest man in the world will run under 10 seconds and the fastest woman cannot run under 10. Because she's not biologically disposed to do so. Even at their highest performance of male and female, there's still, the male is still dominant. So it says something.
The same report says that. The report says that where it is somebody ends up hospitalized, badly injured for domestic violence cases, in most instances it is women. So that supports exactly what you're saying.
Correct.
That if majority, 70% of the cases are initiated, the main aggressor in it is women, according to this. But most of the people ending up in the hospital is women. What I'm telling you? Eventually the man snap.
Correct. And take it into his own hands.
Yeah.
And that's why that's because we are always good at teaching one side instead of teaching together. So the thing is, the lessons that should have been taught together, where both parties, man or woman, respect each other in a way where they understand that I don't put my hands on anyone. We've spoken and taught a negative lesson. Don't hit a woman. But you haven't told the woman not to raise her hand at the man who is by nature stronger than you are. It is nonsensical. It is a foolish position to do. But by not verbalizing that to her socially and verbalizing the contrary to the man socially, you have empowered one party to believe that they could take advantage of the other. And it happens for a while, many a time, until that party snaps eventually, knowing that they're stronger in the first place. And the thing is, what I hate about it, even more than all we're talking about, Shervon, is the fact that we use the lower cases, the lower percentage of cases, where there are women who are honestly being abused for no reason, to substantiate or create or inflate or inflame a really distorted version of what the truth is at the expense of that smaller group of women. When we know in other instances, and as you've given now with statistic of 70%, 70% of this could be avoided.
Yeah, exactly.
So it means, yes, we could deal with the 30%, but 70% can be avoided if we deal with both parties.
Yeah. Yeah. So when people come and say, "Oh, men must stop hitting women. Men must stop hitting women," we saying that for decades.
Correct.
How has that helped women, as you rightfully put it, who are victims of abusive men? How
Correct.
has that helped them?
I
Right?
didn't know them.
It can help them. But when you drill down into it, like we see there, when you break it down and say, "But what is really going on here?" And you see they start to talk about reciprocal violence, two people attacking each other. Wait, have one party who is the main aggressor. When you start to break it down, then we can apply solutions to that, Rondell. We could
Correctly so.
apply to that. We could
Correctly so.
educate. Because that's telling us, as you say, we need to educate our society differently, right? We need to culture them differently, because the culturing we're using by just keep repeating to men and boys, don't hit women, don't hit women, don't hit women. Well, when somebody get hit enough, eventually they'll react.
Correct. Even a
They'll
dog will
react.
react if you lash him too much.
Yeah.
If an owner of a dog who feeds him every day starts to mistreat him or starts to beat him unjustly, even the animal can understand an animal will snap at his owner when he realize eventually. At first, he might take it a few couple times. He may think he ought have done something wrong. But even a dog could see. And a dog could say, I've had too much.
And we address it the right way, Rondell. Now we'll have the resources to deal with the 30%, right? Who are the
Correct.
real victims.
Correct.
Because the real victims still there.
Correct.
So what do we get from posturing and hiding behind these organizations who's selling these narratives to us?
Correct.
Those international and even those local. What
Correct.
do we get from it?
Not one thing. And I mean, what is upsetting to me as well, a lot of these groups always, and particularly they will always, I wouldn't say come at us, but let me say it like this, they will always put forward advice to us. Speak to men, let men be better fathers. And we do that. Because we understand, as though there are many men who are left out of the children's life, we'll be fools to think there are men that have not abandoned the children as well. So we speak to both sides, because for us to improve fatherhood, we must speak to both sides. We do understand that there is a greater push, or there's a greater noise when it comes to speaking to the deadbeat father, because everybody enjoys doing that. So yes, you would hear us many times highlight the case of those who've been left out as well. But we always speak to those fathers who have shirked their responsibility as well. So to get to my point that I'm making is that I will always see these groups come out if a woman is a victim of violence, but at the hands of a man only. They will never come out when the woman is an aggressor, whether the woman is the perpetrator of violence against a woman or violence against another man, against a man, sorry. They always only come out when it is to defend, but never come out when it's time to teach precautionary measure. Yeah. So that when they see women behaving badly, they never come out to reprimand them. And that is one of the reasons, Shervon, you are not going to see a lot of the issues fixed. We could talk about it as we always do, but even they will have their naysayers that will always, despite how knowledgeable and sensible our messages, that will come, whether it's in the comments or whether it's in our calling or whether it's in whichever way, to distract or distort the value of what we see. And that is why I call on women who are not members of these groups, who I think is actually in the mass majority, to find their voices too and speak to your fellow ladies. You all could come together as well and speak to your ladies when they're not behaving well. Speak to the ladies when they need to be reprimanded. Just like how we men have to speak to our young men when they're playing gunman and they're playing killer and they're playing this. We speak to them. But we don't see, even in the areas of young girls, women coming forward to mentor women. It's only about economic gain and economic advantage over men in society. You hear women encouraging women. You never hear them when they're coming to mentor, say, young lady, dress with respect. Very few of them. Young lady, carry yourself away about in a particular way like this. Young lady, do not get involved in gangs because they're in gangs too now. Young ladies, stop beating each other in school and stabbing up each other. We're seeing that you all are now becoming increasingly violent towards yourselves. We're talking about ending violence from ending violence to women. But these groups never care if it is a woman that kills a woman, you know. They only care when it is a man that kills a woman. So you don't care about ending violence to all women. You care about ending violence where men are the perpetrators. And it's
but
time for...
They care about that. I don't even think they care about that. Honestly.
Well,
I don't even think...
You know they care about sharing the agenda.
That is it. Because had they cared, somebody would have looked at what they're doing right now and say it ain't working. But they have been doing the same thing on Rondell ever since.
Very true.
Right? So I find it hard to believe that they genuinely care. And so that is why I have to speak to the ladies out there and say, you cannot continue to align yourself with these organizations. But what has the result been for you? And I say boastfully, the Fathers Association is one of the few organizations that I know who speak honestly to everybody. Right? We don't come here trumpeting no agenda. Last week we sat down and we read the stats here in Trinidad and Tobago, Rondell, that showed, based on the reports from the TTPS, there's a greater number of women who are victims of domestic violence. We read it. We ain't hiding it.
Nothing to hide.
We ain't hiding it. But we're saying if we look at that alone, that will not address the issue.
Correct.
Because when you dig down inside that number telling you something that we continue to ignore. And if we ignore, we can't treat it.
But you see, the thing is, if you say pay attention to it, you're going to fix it and the number going to come down, and then it's no longer going to be agenda. And if it's no longer an agenda, then it no longer can be funded. And if it can't be funded, it means people can't get money anymore. And it means organizations may not see the value in what they do and may not spend money where they're spending money right now. So as I rightfully say, we just speak the truth and speak it loud. So some people need the issue to continue for them to exist, you know.
Yep.
All right.
Carrot and the stick. That is what they need. But I want to switch it up a little bit, Rondell. Last week, we didn't get to touch on two very important areas and they linked. We didn't get to touch on false allegations of abuse. Right? And so I'll lead off again and you know, the reason I just go and look for these things at Trinidad and Tobago and international listeners. In fact, let me remind you all, if anybody wants to engage with us, you can call in on 222-8255. The toll-free number is 866-525-1099, 866-525-1099. The WhatsApp number is 868-318-1021, right? And men, we always tell you all, you all message the page. I see when Rondell did the video earlier this week, people message. They say, I call in all, I message, nobody. Yeah, call me now. This is how we could engage with you all. We've said that before. We cannot speak to the thousands of people who call us or message us individually. We do have the resources to do that. We're doing this of our time, free time. We're not getting paid for this. All right? So we talk and engage. So the reason though, Rondell, I was saying I do this research is to show that we, as I just said, the Fathers Association, we're not just talking things. We're making up opinions, right? The things we put out there is research to back it up, right? So there's a recent study in the US as at February last year, which says that 13% of males and 8% of females, I was surprised by how high the number was, would target of false allegations of abuse. 13%, right? Males and 8% female. 58% of the false accusers were female, right?
Yeah.
And they said that this 2023 number reflects an increase from 2020. Now, somebody may say, but 13%, 1-3, that is not plenty. Even one false allegation of abuse requires time, money, human resources to treat with it. And one allegation of false abuse takes away that time, money, and human resources from a person who is a true victim. So,
Correct.
so you cannot diminish this in any way or form. The issue of false abuse is a serious issue, and this information, and I want to give kudos to this organization. This is the Coalition to End Domestic Violence, and
Right.
normally, Rondell, this organization, people may see this as a feminist organization, right? But
Right.
here they're talking about false allegations, and they're saying mostly men are often the targets, but they are also saying in the report it is a serious threat to family justice. And so kudos to this organization for saying that.
I think that is led by Diana Wyatt Mabir.
No, this
If
is
it's
a
that
foreign
one.
organization.
Oh, well, they just have a similar name.
Similar name, yes. Not foreign organization, yeah. A US organization. Right? We have been saying that this is something that needs to be treated with. With because it impacts negatively on children when it is used as a weapon in family matters, and it is really used as part of that parental alienation tactic that we've been discussing at length. So it impacts on children negatively, and it is taking away resources from the real victims of domestic violence.
Correct. And I mean, I remember Mr. Hanif Benjamin as well. He was the director at Children Authority. I remember we were going across to Tobago for the opening of the family court there. We were in the airport together. I think myself and Wendell Grant was there at the time. And that is one of the things he made mention that was one of their greatest challenges, and how much resources it was taken from them. Because every false allegation that was levied against, and he said almost 100% was the father it was levied against, particularly when there was a matter that was before the court, so that the other party could have an unfair advantage. The amount of resources they send out a false report is just as the same amount of resources that they send out for a real report. And only during investigation is when they find out it is a false report. You understand?
Yeah.
So that in itself should tell any sensible leader on both sides of the fence who sits in the parliament that it is important to draft legislation that does not allow these very important state authorities to waste their time.
But
persons must be penalized.
But there's legislation, right? When people go and make
police
reports, right? Yeah, you're charged for wasting
wasteful employment at the police time. Yes, but I don't know if the Children Authority could use that. The police may be able to use that. The Child Protection Unit might be able to use that. But I don't know if the CA could use it. They may not. I don't think so. So in that regard, I mean, they have to have in these independent organizations, particularly where there's investigative work done, or a general law where it covers all investigative units pertaining to these things, where that ever takes time and or commits or ever takes place, that the person is seriously penalized, and not at the low level of what we see wasteful employment that police time is as well, Shervon. The consequence must be far more severe than just going in the station and say, but a man thief my shoe and he never thief it. You understand? You're talking about, because beside also the wasteful employment at that time, that is just one part, the authority.
Child abuse.
The abuse on the child is one. The abuse on the other party is one. The defamation is another thing. The false social perception. This is a lot of social damage this person is committing by that level of fabrication.
Yeah.
So the consequence must serve as a great deterrent.
Yeah.
Pay 20,000. Pay 20,000 or 5 years imprisonment.
I say go in jail. Go in jail and pay a fine.
Yeah, or both.
Just pay a fine. The rich, those who have money will get away.
They will pay their 20.
Yeah. Go to jail.
Go and spend some months in jail, hard labor, and pay a fine on top of it.
Yeah. And,
simple as that.
The organizations who are genuine, who say they're interested in domestic violence, they should be saying this loud and clear.
Correct.
Because again,
that's why I was shocked when you told me, when I thought it's the local one you're talking about.
No, not at all.
I was hopeful for a second, but then you just dash all my hopes all over again.
No. But that should be high on your agenda.
If you want to fix the problem.
If you want to fix the problem.
Correct.
Because if you don't know, if you're a victim of domestic, you're going to the police, you make a report. The police have to investigate. That's an officer, that's a resource. You go to the court, you say, I want to apply for a protection order. That's a clerk to take your application. It has to go before a master or magistrate to hear your application. They have supporting staff to deal with the application. Then when they make an order, they include social services to investigate the allegation. They have to give orders to the police to take particular. So that is millions of dollars, Rondell. That may go towards one case.
Correct.
And time and resources, which is precious, right?
Correct.
The normal judicial officers we have are not indefinite, and police officers are not indefinite. So
correct.
Everyone who has to take time to deal with a false allegation is impacting real victims.
Correct.
And I would be interested to know, these are the US stats, what those stats will say in Trinidad and Tobago. Right?
Correctly.
I have Dr. Alan Blotke, hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a forensic psychologist. And he has pointed out the prevalence, Rondell, at which he is seeing false abuse being made in family court cases. Right? And he said in his studies, he said it is critical that judges and masters be able to detect when this is happening.
Correctly so.
Right? And he goes to the impact of the child and the other parties involved, like you witnessed here. But here's what he said. His recommendation is, and this goes back to what you and I always talking about.
Right.
His recommendation to uncover false allegations of abuse is to uncover parental alienation syndrome. He said if you look for that, you will notice the tactic being used inside of there. Because it wouldn't be lying about abuse alone, but all the other things that are tied to parental alienating behaviors. You would see all of that inside there. So he's saying social services and courts must be trained to look out for this. Well, I think Children Authority, right? In our context, Children Authority, they must as well be trained to look out for this.
Let me tell you something, as I make mention of the training and like social services and thing. I think I don't know, boy. I don't know if there's a panel that they pass through before they become, or if it's just some exams that they do, or what. But because I can tell you, I've had, I'm not saying all, but I've had experiences with so many, and I believe too many social service officers who are blatantly biased. And by the time I finish speaking to them, is only when they say, hey, I learned something. Hey, I understand something. Hey, I never thought about this before. But I haven't gone through the training you have gone through. I didn't go and learn this or get a degree to do this. I learned this experience on the ground. So then how so? If you you have been exposed to the theory, and then I'm expecting that you would have then be exposed to the ground to get experiential knowledge. How do they only learn certain things that are in existence after I have to make mention to them? And that to me is troubling. Because as long as I have been doing it on the ground, if you've been doing it, Shervon, and can see things, if Wendell has been doing it and can see things, if Marlon has been doing it and can see things, they are on the very same ground as well. And they are supposed to be better trained than even the advocate, because they are supposed to be able to walk and toe that line of neutrality. So it is very disappointing to me many times. And let me tell you when it happens many times. It happens many times when that social service officer is a single mother herself. And the discussions that we often have turns into me now counseling them about their challenge. And that says something to me, that sometimes we have persons in places that are going through personal experiences that is going to cloud their judgment for the manner in which they must perform their duty. So whether it's social worker, whether it's police officer, whether it's a judge, a master, if we do not have management committees around these persons to ensure that these persons who are entrusted to perform these duties are in the right mental space or in a social space where they are not mentally compromised, so that they can no longer perform the duty they are called to, then they should either be reshuffled to another department, recycled, or replaced by persons who are in a better headspace so to do. Or else we just wasting time.
I agree with you. And I think that calls for policy in these institutions, all of these institutions, where there's a duty to report if you are facing some sort of social situation in your own home.
Correct.
And we are not saying that you'll be unemployed, kick you out from that point, but we are saying you need to now get some counseling yourself.
Correct.
So that you can separate what you are dealing with from, and you wouldn't reflect it on the person who you have to address after.
Correct.
Because that's normal human behavior, you know. There are men, Rondell, will call me, and I'm sure that happens to you too. And they will start to tell you a story about their situation. And all of a sudden, you start to realize, but it's something like my situation that I went through. And you start to connect to them. And if you're not careful, you could get pulled in and reflect your own situation bias that was built on your situation on them.
Very true.
That happens to us.
Very true.
But there's a duty to report. That should not be a secret. And I'm glad you put that on the table. In all of these organizations, the court, if you're making those decision-making processes, judges, masters, magistrates, social workers, mediators, and so on. Right?
And I like your point as well, Shervon. It should be done. I say I like your point as well. Because it's important. It should be done in a manner where they don't feel that they're at risk of losing your job. You don't feel like you're failing in your job. You don't feel like if you don't have no knowledge or but you must realize for whatever reason I'm compromised at this point in time. And I will not be best fitted to deal with these things. So okay, what? If I am having an issue and I need family court, better you shuffle me somewhere else for now. You understand? If I'm in this court, or if I'm in this field doing social work on this side, maybe I should put me on the next side. Let me deal with grants or something where it may not, you understand, be that impactful on me. Yeah. But you have to create that culture, and it must be in a healthy way, whereas the employee is honest enough to say, here what? I wouldn't do the best that I supposed to be doing if you leave me here right now.
And that comes from framing your policy, right? If I
Correctly.
frame a policy, I'll let you know there's no loss of earnings, no loss of anything, loss of promotion, loss of anything. To give you the chance, as you say, to get the help that you need, and so that you could continue on the path. That is normal. That is only natural. And that is definitely out of this conversation a policy that needs to be considered by in those agencies. Now, Rondell, we also have the issue, and I want to touch on this a bit, is the process by which domestic violence is addressed. And I have a serious issue with it. When somebody goes to the police, what we see happening a lot of times, and that has been my experience, our experience as an association, the police is saying to somebody who comes to them and say, this person hit me, this person beating me, this person cussing me, this person financially abusing me, all of the different things that are listed in the Domestic Violence Act. What we see happening is that the police will say to the victim, the alleged victim, go to the court and make an application for domestic violence. And when you go to the court and you make an application for a protection order, and when you get that, then come back. Why is that? The police has the power to investigate. If someone says that their spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, within the domestic violence context, is abusing them, why isn't it being investigated in the same way? Why are you sending it off to the court? The court to investigate? The court to do what? To arrest someone? The court, that power, that ability to investigate in all the ways, medically, forensics, emotionally, physical, every way, right? Financial investigations, that is best served if it is done by the police. In fact, the most effective way, in my view, to address the issue of domestic violence, regardless of your gender, is if the police quickly, effectively, and efficiently investigates it and then addresses it from that point. Because what you see happening a lot of the times, the Domestic Violence Act says that a hearing for a domestic violence application could be heard anywhere between now, present, immediate, to 7 days. Right? So you go to the court and you say, I need a protection order for whatever reason. The court gives you a date within 7 days to be heard. In doing that, the court has to issue a summons for the person who you have made the allegation of domestic violence against to appear before the court. Many times, you hear people saying, well, I didn't even know it had an application against me. Because within that 7-day period, the police is unable to locate the alleged perpetrator to serve them the document to come to court. So, how can that make any sense? So what happens? In the first hearing of the protection order, most of the times, the first person, the only person present is the person who made the allegation. And depending on the information they provide to the court makes an interim order in some cases. Right? Again, but if that court makes an interim order against me, the police has to find me and give me a document that now says, and this is the accusation that has been made against me, and I need to now desist from taking this action or do the next whatever steps. Stay 50 feet away. Don't cuss the person. Don't say whatever it is the person say you're saying. And in some cases, persons have even been evicted from their homes. unawares as to what is happening. So they may be in the house lying down, and somebody and police knock on the door, hand them a court order and say, listen here, this order says that you must leave these premises because, and go where? Go where is the question many people ask who reach out to us in these situations. Right? People say, well, go by your family, go. But how is it? I haven't received my day in quarters yet. And I'm already starting to face consequences. How does that work? I haven't gotten my opportunity to come before the court and defend myself. But I already have consequences that I'm facing. To me, that is very contradictory to the very nature of our judicial system, which is that the accused must have his or her date in court. I want to think about it, you know. And so we are saying that the police need to take the necessary steps to investigate claims and allegations of domestic violence and stop forwarding people to the courthouse and say your work done until the court issues a protection order for you to go out and serve. No, you get up and investigate. You have the authority to investigate and the authority to lay charges and the authority to prosecute. Again, to me, if that is done efficiently, if that is done effectively, then the victims will get or should get better and swift justice. We really need to think carefully about what this current system that we have, how does it benefit those who are real victims? You have the court being clogged. When you look at the reports that are released by the judiciary, the annual reports, and the number of applications that are made for very different, from many different issues, right? And then when you look at the limited number of resources that the state has, which is what pays for the judiciary to run. The judiciary is not a for-profit business. They don't pay for themselves. So the state is who has to provide those funds to hire judges and masters and magistrates and all the staff and all of the supporting systems that make up the judiciary. And if all we keep doing is just funneling cases into there, funneling things into there that we can treat with, right, effectively up front, then what we see is what we get. There are people who call and say, oh gosh, you're no longer taking the guard date. Well, how many more judges and masters you want the state to hire and magistrates? How many more? We have to treat the things more sensibly, because if the police properly investigates, and in the case of child abuse, if the Children Authority properly investigates, and it is found that there's no evidence, or it is found that it is false, they can address it before it reaches the court. I don't know what you all think, but this is not, we have not been seeing the benefits of curbing the behaviors related to domestic violence, and it is not for a lack of a lot of resources and a lot of effort going into what exists right now. There are a lot of resources going into it. There's a lot of effort going into it. And yet still every year you hear people come on and they say, we ain't reaching no way. We still far. We still increasing. You hear ministers come on TV and say things getting, we still seeing increases. We're still seeing increases. But what? I can't remember who said it. They said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And that is what we have been doing in this country for the longest while. We've continued doing the same things, and we're saying, well, why we ain't seeing anything different? Our children are at risk, Trinidad and Tobago. Our children are at risk if we are unable to address this issue of domestic violence. If we don't address it properly, the violent behavior and violent tendencies you're seeing by boys and now girls playing out in social media, in their school uniform, in the middle of the road, on the school compound, in maxi taxis. What we are seeing, that breakdown in our social values and behaviors, if we are unable to address the family issues facing this country, in time to come will be shattered in pieces. People look to Haiti, sorry to make them out in an example, and people talk about, well, look how, oh my God, look how bad things are there. That's the direction we're heading in. We need to address the issues facing families in a serious and practical way. We have been appealing to this government and past governments. We've been appealing to the Honorable Attorney General. Again, we have written to you. We've been following up with you, asking you for an opportunity so that we can meet and discuss the issues impacting families in Trinidad and Tobago. Because the things that we highlight that are impacting fathers and impacting men and boys impact the whole family system. Every father lost a violent crime in this country leaves a fatherless home behind, leaves a mother to fight up and raise one child, two child, and more. And we have been pleading repeatedly to address with the Attorney General to meet and treat with us. Rondell, you back on?
Yeah, back on there, bro. I cut off there.
Rondell, I was making a point just when you got cut off. I want to hear your take on this.
Tell me.
I was talking about the current process we have for treating with domestic violence, which I disagree with.
Yeah.
Where what we've been receiving reports from our customers are, they go to the police station to report that they have been a victim of domestic violence. And instead of the police investigate the issue then and there and take the necessary steps, the police have just been forwarding them to the courts. Saying, go and make a protection order application. Now, when you go and make a protection order application, the issue is that the law says a protection order application must be heard anywhere between 0 and 7 days. Now to 7 days. When the court issues a summons for the person to appear in court, the police can't get them within a short time.
Correct.
And so what happens? An interim order is sometimes issued.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be lying down in your house, police knock down on your door and hand you this piece of paper until you get out.
Ex parte.
And you have not been given the opportunity to be heard in court as yet. But you're already facing consequences. And my take on that is, Rondell, that the body that should be first investigating incidents of domestic violence is the police. And
True.
where it is found that there is domestic violence, they lay charges before the court.
Sensible. I mean, I agree with that approach because, but the thing is, Shervon, the power of certain lobby, because it is backed by certain groups, is so strong. so that even in some of these laws being drafted, as nonsensical as we see it happening now, when it's after during the drafting, it's championed. During the drafting, it is piloted as though it's a great and a magnificent thing that we've done for society. But then when it plays out into society, we see how foolish it is. Because the devil's advocate will want to say, well, we had to do something to get women who are in danger, who are in risk, into safety. And the man who is abusive and a man who will end her life out of the home. But then it goes back again to what you and I was saying. Is this of the 70% or the 30%? And that is why the investigative process, which you are speaking about, is so important. Because if there is proper investigation, then you will know it is of the 70% or the 30%. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
But what makes sense is illogical to some. You see, if we just do things to push agendas and you don't give proper thought as into what its impact will be on society, we will always be in the situation because we've made a law or we've made a policy to only satisfy a demand, not knowing if the demand was even a credible one, because you haven't even researched or investigated it to that level as yet. That statistic, what you have quoted or cited from the United States, we should have a local version of it.
Yeah.
And if we have a local version of it, then we would have understood or known if even such an order or even such a law of it being 7 days is something that is suitable for our society. Is it that the situation is this grave or this grievous as we're making it sound? You were saying something, Shervon?
No, I was going to say, let's say it is. Right?
Right.
Let's assume it is, right? They say, what is preventing? Because domestic violence, you come and you say, let's say we go into the worst case scenario, right? Your life is in danger, right?
Right.
My life is in danger. My life is in danger. The person who is best placed to investigate that immediately is the police, not the court.
Correct. Correctly so.
The court is not in a position to investigate that in that type of way, right? The court has to send or asking for a medical report, that to send a social worker to start interviewing people. The police could walk out the station and go and do that now.
Because they have the power to do so.
Right. And they need the resources to do so too, right?
Correct.
But they could deal with that right away. And the same, because people will come and say, oh, the reason that is needed is because domestic violence, somebody in urgent danger. But if the same urgent action is taken by the police, you could get the same, not the same, you will get a better result. Let me put it that, correct that.
And I would still think the gender-based violence unit has the power to do so. I have seen that in many cases. I have seen cases where we have gotten information. I remember specifically many a time when Superintendent Guy Allen was the head at GBVU, where we forwarded information of abusive men that were really dangerous to the women in their space. And without any restraining order at the point in time, they went and apprehended the person. I remember that specifically. You understand? The gender-based violence unit. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Maybe is it really necessary? I could understand to do this preempting a police investigation.
Correct. And it's the
you
same
understand?
You need an urgent order from the court to address some part of this. But you, as a police officer, you can make that application before the court.
Correct.
And Rondell, I have gotten calls from customers, and the law again speaks to this. Somebody will go in the police station tonight, and the police telling them go in the court tomorrow. But the law says that the police have the power, Rondell,
to go tonight.
The court.
Correct.
And go tonight.
Yeah.
So to me, that approach is ineffective.
I mean, you still need the police, you know, because even with the protection order, which is a piece of paper, is the police is he acting wheel behind it. Is
Still
that
have
is
to
what
go
they
back
really
to it.
is
Still have to
in
go back.
fair are the actions of the police if you breach the court order anyhow. Is the
Yeah.
police you don't want to come for you anyhow? It's not the paper. You understand?
It's not the court coming out and arrest you. It's the
It's the
police.
police
Right.
still. So at the end of the day, even if they say it's to get the paper so it stands as some level of fair tactic, the police to me, knowing the police is responsive to these kind of things and readily going to investigate, that in itself should serve more so as a deterrent more than anything else.
Yes, you're correct. You're correct. Because as it is, yes, it has legal standing. But I talk about the man on the street.
Right.
This seems administrative
Hmm.
from the perspective of the man on the street. But when police come and start to investigate, right? And as I say, the police need an urgent order to evict you, they could treat with that. The
Correct.
police need to put somebody in a shelter as an emergency, they
They
could
could
treat
do
with
that
that.
too. Correct. They just do that.
Right? Right, they do that. So,
Yeah.
that is the most practical. And that way I was saying, Rondell, I was making the point. The resources of the court is
But
limited.
And I remember there was a discussion and an argument around that. Because if I remember correctly, must be some discussion or panel I was on. And an issue that many women are is that sometimes for the police to act in that manner, most times the police, if they could at that time, they would remove the woman and take her to a safe house.
Mm-hmm.
And many women didn't like that. Whether the house belonged to the man or not, they wanted the man out of the house. And then the debate was, well, if the woman is in danger by the same man, isn't it safer that she is not or she's removed from the space that the man is familiar with? Because even if we remove the man and he is such a threat and a danger to her life, he could return, kill himself after.
Yeah.
You understand?
You're
So
correct.
so if it may be, and I mean this is just far-fetched a bit, but it could really be that some people think for you to leave the house, and then engage in some type of court battle after, and the man is still inside of the house, it puts them at a disadvantage when it comes to financial provisions, financial provision matter, where the man is in the house and you outside the house already. You understand?
You have to find somewhere to rent or whatever it is until that case
Correct.
is. Mm-hmm.
Correct. Because I even to me, I think that if this is the family house, the man may have a key, the woman have a key. Even if she change the lock, a man must know his house. If this man are dealing in the cases where the men are really a threat and will really harm and will really injure and will really kill this woman, why in the world you want to have that woman in that same house what the man so familiar with?
Yeah.
You tell him stay away from the house some 21 days. You
So you
feel
ain't gonna
21 days is
not like you're gonna arm guards outside the house tonight.
exactly. You're not going to have police guard in the house.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? But if you put her in a space that may be unknown to the dangerous person, or a space where she's around other individuals that may now create a deterrent to the individual, you have a greater chance of saving her life.
Mm-hmm.
Opposed to leaving her in a house just to see if she go get the house too, that will end up being her tomb.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I've been listening, although I've been in and out of studio. I've been listening. Tell me something. I think it's something that a lot of people would like to know. What is the real role of the gender-based violence unit? Are they readily available for their purpose at all police stations, or are they based somewhere else? Yeah, last week we were talking, and I was asking if they are on call, so that if something happens within a certain precinct, if I should use that word, that they can be readily available to come and do what they are trained to do. because I know policemen who are at stations, especially at nighttime. You just meet the sentry. Most of the time, it's a lackadaisical kind of approach from them to get them to function, and they will simply say, like you guys are saying, go to court tomorrow.
Mm.
So if you guys can see what are the duties of the gender-based violence unit, especially to all precincts, because you never know when something can happen.
The gender-based violence unit was set up in 2020 by then Commissioner Gary Griffith.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of the unit was to be for it to be like the specialist unit within the TTPS that deals with domestic violence. So like how you have the drug and narcotics. I can't remember if I'm using the correct name. You may have what is it? Financial, the fraud unit. Yeah, this is the specialist unit.
Fraud squad,
right? Fraud squad and all of those things. They are not in every police station, David. Right? I think there are particular stations in which they are housed at, and I can't remember all of the stations offhand. I'll try and get that info.
Yeah, that's true. Most of the major stations.
Yes. But if you go to a police station and you report domestic violence, that report, from what I understand from their reports, that unit is supposed to take on the specialist care of that at the end of the day. The same way if you go and report a fraudulent matter, it will go to the fraud squad. You may go to a REMA station, but they will put it onto the fraud squad to take the lead. That is their role. So they are like the specialist body that treats with domestic, or supposed to be treated with domestic violence matters.
But
it's strange to understand domestic violence is a different kettle of fish as compared to fraud and the other incidents facilitation, right? But domestic violence can erupt almost in every village. I mean, how long does it take for a response from the gender-based violence if it's something that can articulate or will demand immediate response?
Correct. And in my humble view, I think the gender-based violence unit was rolled out, I think, with very little preparation, very little, I would say, as I say, preparation, prep, or I think even properly study into or research into organization like that. Because
but go back to the man that you were saying as well, Rondell, while you're talking about it. When you were saying laws were created because who advocating and demanding.
Correct, exactly. Agencies, so the same thing, it's popular. Gender-based violence is a popular topic. Somebody must come and pitch something to you, and it sounds nice to do, so you do it. So you man the forces with people who are who are hardly trained to even sit in those places, and that's sometimes what you see most of the time. You understand? Just the composition of that organization, I am telling you, is a gender bias. You understand? There are plethora among the women more that are employed under that unit than there are men. You understand? And another point to that is that we talking about the physical aspects of domestic violence. But can a man walk in and say, hey, I'm being verbally abused? How do you prosecute that? Or a man say, because all these things under the act, right? Physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse. But most reports, I am pretty sure, is only when it gets to the stage of physical abuse. So when it isn't those things, does the law stipulate, I haven't noticed any, ways to treat with the other mechanisms? So just as we know, okay, if it's physical violence, well, boy, it comes like if there's battery or something and the police could do X, Y, Z. But if it is something that is non-physical, do you charge somebody for it and bring them before a court too? Like, I know you could issue a restraining order if the person cursing at you and them kind of thing, so that they're supposed to not curse at you. But what is the real consequence of these things? Or is restraining orders the only consequence for these other forms and types of behavior? Or is it that the court will order you to counseling by Dolly's and Associates, or order you to do these things? And that is why I wonder and I ask myself, was this unit, was there any real consideration of the offenses that this unit may face, the charges that we may need, that will be laid? Was the legislation in the law that supports it? I am not sure if this was a copy and paste unit in the police service, or if it was one that was really, that all the preparatory work was done and we really know what we're doing inside of that unit.
Because there must be expertise in every faction of what you just said, for
Correct.
for emotional. I mean, are these people, the members of that unit, so qualified, or so they possess that kind of expertise to quell these kind of disturbances amongst family members or whoever the domestic violence is concerned? Because, like you rightfully say, most people tend to believe that it's a physical thing.
Correct. And here the domestic other violences as well. Remember, as I was telling you guys, this extends to every member in the family too. So sometimes it's a mother or it's a two brothers or two sisters who fighting for a piece of land that their mother leave, or some kind of things like this. Is this unit? Yeah, I mean, well, gender based may not deal with that. I don't know but it's domestic violence under the law. So how you treat with that, Shervon, or is gender based violence only dealing with IPV, intimate partner violence?
No, gender-based violence is supposed to deal with all violence under the Act, the Domestic Violence Act. And when you look at the Domestic Violence Act,
it's broad.
Yeah, it's broad. It covers a number of people who they call, where they call domestic relationships, right? They say here, it says a domestic relationships is a relationship is a spouse, former spouse, cohabitant, a child, a dependent, a relative, right? I calling it a fiance, right? But the same person who agreed to marry the respondent, right, was in a relationship by marriage, has a child, but the person is in all these different things they list out. So it's not restricted to just intimate partner violence.
Correct. So that goes to my point. Was this given any real thought to the members of that unit? How are they selected? I don't want to know that they went on a course. They bring down somebody from America, and they went on a course, or somebody from the UN, and they went on a course and get them some stats, and they did a course for 6 months. This is something that you had to be trained to do. This is an organization that you were supposed to have the unit. It built out with everything that you would need, and the right training for years going forward. Years. This is supposed to be a plan that was there from so long ago. I believe it was a plan of some advocacy group, but was it a plan of the originally from TTPS, and were they putting the methods in place that they needed to be able to have an effective unit now?
No, and I was going to say the way you talk about education and these types of things is ongoing. Because there's always new research, right? There is always new studies, new reports, new academic insights. Because these things are, right, you have a whole set of underlying psychological issues and all of these things. So to develop something like this, as you're rightfully saying, requires a particular structure. But David, you touched on this the last time we met, and I wanted to add this to it. All of the officers we are seeing in the TTPS, even if you have a gender-based violence unit, all need to be trained to respond to and act where domestic violence reports are made. All of them, bar none. Because this is a critical part of your interaction with the public. We see the stats and the data all the time. So it's not just, yes, the gender-based violence unit maybe they want to take it to another level. But this needs to be an intricate or integral part of the training that officers go through in the through their in not just in the barracks, but even when they come out, as I say, continuous training, because there are always new insights. And I don't know, our officer may say, but yeah, we just do that in the barracks, but not just in the barracks. And if you're doing it in the barracks, I would like to see what that curriculum entails. Because we hear the stories, we see the media capture the stories all the time, for both men and women. Right? You hear about women facing embarrassing comments and situations when they go to report domestic violence, as well as men. Right? Because you see the videos that come out here and circulate where men are being heckled and laughed at by some officers in the station. So where is the continuous training, right, to build that platform or lay that platform or get that cultural change as to how we address domestic violence from that aspect?
Well, I think we should have some sort of a, let me use the word civilian, expertise, especially because just the name of that unit.
They do have a civilian representation, They do.
Yeah.
Yes. So they have a police head and they have a civilian senior as well. I'm not sure the dynamics as to how they function with each other, but they do have that as well.
What I'm saying is that there are some people, okay, if you look at the universities and stuff, you might find people who delve and who are the faculty that they're dealing with. It's more people oriented, So to me, just the name, the gender-based violence unit. You see that last word there? I think
the connotation.
Yeah, it prompts people to believe that this is just about physical violence.
Yes, I take your point.
That story.
Yeah.
So I think it should have had a different name. The unit should have been given a different name that tells people that if there are consequences or there are incidents where it's not physical, well, we have this kind of expertise that can deal with the situation to eradicate the problem.
That's an excellent point, David, because it's almost as we are saying to people, come when is the worst case scenario.
Yes, when it's physical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, as part of the unit, regardless of name, do they have counselors? Do they have independent social workers that would actually help families who may not have become, as I say, violent with each other as yet, but need assistance in working with not just co-parenting for separated couples, but those who are still together, having marital issues. You understand? Counseling.
When they use that word counseling, to me, I mean, if you're a person that is a cool-spirited person, a person who has spiritual values, a person who will adhere to values on the whole, from A to Z, I mean, it's easy for you to have a verbal conversation. But if there are people, instead of using that word consultation and consultants and thing and counselors and this kind of thing, I think these people should be specially trained in different areas of human development, so that we can have an expert like a psychiatrist. I hardly hear those words, being part of counseling. They say, well, they have people who will counsel you. A person who can counsel can be just a person who is very good with words.
Agreed. But when I say counsel, I mean any professional level and good ones too, because I can tell you there are some psychiatrists who are the worst too. So and that is what I'm saying. I mean, it shouldn't just be the doctorate shouldn't sell you alone. I think you should have a management process where a panel understands what you're about to do, what you're set out to do, and doing the monitoring and evaluation to see if you're really capable of doing it.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Some people, and they're as much as I might have said naysayer when it comes to psychiatrists doing shippiness, there are psychiatrists doing good things too. So it's about getting those that are the most qualified And
Yes.
my view is sometimes, whether it be experientially, whether it be through theory and experience,
Mm-hmm.
but getting those that are most qualified, that have had high results when it comes to whatever you're trying to achieve, whether it is for dealing with persons with marital issues, whether it is with mediation, whether it is with rehabilitating perpetrators, whether it's males or females that have been abusive to their spouses. So because they have to get to that point too, where we get persons, all right, to work with those who we consider to be the perpetrators also.
Yes.
You
Yes.
understand?
Quite agreed. Quite agreed. But gentlemen, we are out of time.
Time there, Shervon.
Yeah.
Yeah, we out of time there.
Yes.
Yeah.
In
So
closing,
David and for one or two, we thank you all as always for having us
yes.
and creating this space for men and listeners across Trinidad and Tobago and internationally. We thank you all for joining today. And as always, we say these things, but we say these things with the hope that those who are in authority here and take the necessary steps. Just before Ronald felt joined back in there, I was speaking to our outreach to our engagement or hope to engage the Honorable Attorney General who we've written to and reached out to on occasions, who's a key player in resolving some of these issues through legislation and policy and so on. And so we hope that they would hear our pleas and make time so that we can sit and have these very important conversations. Rondell, final words?
Yeah, man. I once again must say, I must echo the sentiments of Shervon, thanking Power 102 for the space they've created for us. Must thank you guys as well, Shervon, that continue to hold on the fort, particularly when I'm unwell or when I'm absent. Or, I mean, whether I'm well and present as well, you all holding it down as well. I want to make a continued call to Trinidad and Tobago to appreciate this level of patriotism. It takes a lot for a person to take off their time to share this information, have the discussion, entertain these challenging questions sometimes, and put information out there to better edify our population. These are the conversations that if we want to transform our society, we need to have, and we need to make the time to have. You cannot be busy, and then only when you have a problem during the week, you come and you look on Messenger for Rondell Fields or Shervon Lewis or Wendell Grant or Marlon or one of us to assist you out of your personal issue. This is an issue that is going. These are issues that we have in our domestic space, whether we are husbands, whether we are wives, whether we are separated partners, that can only get better if we all involve ourselves in the conversation and purpose for a better way forward. So I want to encourage you guys to come out, make your presence felt, come out, make the phone calls that you need to have, because we have committed to ourselves. This is the only platform we are going to do outreach on. And we need to see you guys if you really want to have that assistance rendered to you. We're still going to have these Zooms that I know Shervon and they have, but we're asking you guys to come out in the afternoon, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, put forward the questions to us that you think are pertinent for yourself. If you're a mother and you have a young son and you want to know better for yourself as well, feel free to join the conversation. So I just wish you guys a safe weekend, and until we meet again next Friday, God's blessings upon all of you.
Thank
Same
you
to
so
you all.
much, Rondell. And thank you, Shervon.
Have a good one.
Yes. That's it for today's edition of Hard Talk, featuring the Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago with hosts Shervon Lewis and the man himself, Rondell Fields. They'll be back next Friday for another edition of Hard Talk, Fathers Association.